All right, so it's a privilege to be here with everybody. So Dan mentioned some sacred art that we recently had commissioned, and I can tell you just a bit about it. So we obviously see Our Lady of the Holy Rosary there, very important to our mission and really the foundation, it being the Peace with Dementia Rosary community podcast, book, etc. So below, moving counterclockwise, is St. John the Evangelist. And you may or may not know he's the patron saint of caregivers. Why is he that patron saint? Well, Jesus gave the Blessed Virgin Mary into his care after he died on the cross. Next is Saint Dymphna. Many people are familiar with Saint Dymphna. She's the patron saint of anxiety, depression, mental illness, and I add to that brain disorders. And then followed by Saint Raphael, who was actually not in the original idea when I approached the artist in Louisiana, but he has a devotion to St. Raphael and said, you know what, he is the patron saint of healing and also of travelers. And those who are experiencing dementia, all the families are certainly on a journey, a challenging journey. So, and the overall mission of this apostolate is to really highlight our Catholic faith and to see how does our Catholic faith accompany us for over 2,000 years. I believe we have everything figured it out, but we haven't yet applied it to dementia, and I hope to do that today and always with this ministry. So I'm starting with this slide and the next slide are from our Holy Father to show that there is a focus on the elderly, that there's a focus on dementia. It starts in Rome. So this year, starting in February, this was the first papal audience, February 23rd of this year, and Pope Francis would have this, and he would have 17 other weekly audiences that are dedicated to what he called catechesis on aging, where he would highlight the dignity and the value of older adults. In this snippet right here, I'm not going to read it, but basically he talks about how the old can be discarded. It's very easy for that to happen, and indeed our secular society does do that. But the Catholic Church, and here our Holy Father, tells us that they are not to be discarded. And in further audiences, he talks about how valuable they are, how they are a gift to our faith and to future generations and to saving souls. So I invite you to explore that on their website. Just type in papal audiences or catechesis on aging. And it's 18 episodes spread over these many months. It concluded in August. And then this is a tweet. Yes, the Pope is on Twitter. Hopefully, if you're on Twitter, you follow him. And he had this on World Alzheimer's Day on the 22nd of September this year. So when I found this, I took a snapshot of it like this, and I started sending it to all my friends, or the families that I know or other Catholics, to let them know that the Pope is indeed thinking and praying for them. So I'm going to show you a 5-minute clip of the Peace with Dementia Rosary podcast, and it's really just to give everybody a snapshot of the type of education and the sentiment that we want to get out to everyone, not just Catholics, not just Christians, but everybody. This is Philip Bellini. He is at St. Stephen Parish in Uptown New Orleans, where I live. I don't attend this, but we are friends. He's a director of religious education, and he's going to talk about how he became an adult in his faith, not until he was caring for his mom who had dementia.
Then something else happened, okay? Up until about 6 or 7 months before she went, 7 months before she died, Mom was pretty much able to, at times, take care of herself, under care, bathe herself, things like that. But now it was really 24 over watch over care. And so what happened was, I had to learn how to do different things that I never thought I could do. And this is where the part of becoming an adult in my faith comes from. I'm there, it could be 2 in the morning, it could be 4 in the morning, you never know. And I was standing there after she was in hospice, lying in her medical bed. And I had to do something that I never think I could do. And there's a large crucifix on my wall. And I'm looking at my mom, and I know I had to change the sheets. And I knew that I was going to have to change her. and that I was going to have to give her somewhat of a bath. And I looked at the crucifix and I said, Lord, I can't do this. This is my mom. If this is my dad, I could do it. But this is my mom, okay? I can't do this. And then all of a sudden it came to me, pray. And the love of my life, I prayed to our Blessed Mother. And I asked her at the end of the Hail Mary, please help me to do this. I have to do this or else nobody else is going to do it. My mom's going to be miserable. Please help me with this. And so I got through the first few nights. And then after about a week of Hail Marys, and my rosary besides, because my chair was right next to the bed so I could take care of her, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. I mean, it literally, God's grace just overwhelmed me at one point. And here I am looking at my mom, a naked body in front of me that I had to bathe and change. And for the first time, I saw in my mom something I'd never seen before, because when she was in her 40s, she had a double mastectomy. So I never saw her with that, with the way that looked before. And I said, my goodness. And I was seeing her for the first time. And then all of a sudden, that grace hit, as I mentioned, and I looked at my mom's hands, which were bony because she lost a lot of weight. Those were the hands that held me as a baby. Those were the hands that caressed me. Those were the hands that hugged me when I needed consolation. Those were the hands that disciplined me when I needed it, okay? And I said, and it came to me in my mind, do you know what you're looking at here? You're looking at a body, your mom, who spent her life in sacrifice for her family. And I realized that what I was looking at in bed was love. And when that hit me, and I realized I had the chance to do this for Mom in her last days, the washing and the cleaning and the changing of the sheets and all of those things became a joy. God's asking me to do this, to overcome myself, okay, my own personal needs and wants, and caring about somebody more than you care for yourself. And I began to realize through the self-denial from the dementia to this harder part of doing all these things, that I had finally, even though many have suffered much more, okay, and have gone through the same thing, that I realized that, hey, for the first time in my life, I understand what suffering is. And now, when I go back and teach others, adults, about suffering, that it's not just going to be a class, but an understanding of bringing that suffering across to somebody else, because you went through it. It's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to go through it, okay? And as a result of that, that's why I say, after all of that happened, and I couldn't have said it before, I became an adult in my faith, because now I was into the big picture, and it was love, and I know that love came from that cross that evening and the Rosary. Our Blessed Mother has been a major part of my life, and I know for a fact that Our Lady and those praying for me, of course, helped me get through all of that. And that, you see, you can do it with prayer. You can do it with faith. And I said, I became an adult.
Yeah. But it is, personally, so I'm on a faith journey, right, just like we all are. And, it's God's mercy to put me in front of people like Philip, for this type of testimony. And it's a privilege to bring it to folks, hoping to inspire. His journey is going to be different than everybody else's, but I'm hoping that people are going to see the faith and see how it applies to them if you're not already. And I do want to say one thing. A very common question that I get about the book that I self-published is that who's the book for? And so it is a very valid and I think a good question. So I thought I'd let everybody know real quick. So I would say it's mainly for caregivers to take a look at it, because it's how to care for somebody. It's this philosophy of giving. It's a philosophy of hope. It's really our Catholic message that even in the suffering there's a full life to be lived, like we heard this morning. And so there's practical tips in there about caregiving in different phases. There's also prayer intentions. But that said, I would also say those who are living with dementia who are still able to read, because just because there's a diagnosis doesn't mean that that goes away or that you take the car keys away. But give it a chance. Read it to your loved one. If they can't read it, or give them the opportunity. I've heard with people living with dementia that have read the book and they've found meaning in it. So just wanted to let you know if anybody is curious about that. So what is dementia? Just very briefly, it's a whole lot of things. There's a lot of ambiguity in it. There's a lot we don't know. Many of y'all know we don't have any kind of cure. There are FDA-approved drugs, but there is no cure. There's no way to slow it down. There's no way to stop it, unfortunately. So a lot of ambiguity, but to define it, dementia is a very broad term, and it describes symptoms such as memory loss or memory impairment. I think that's the primary thing that people think of when they think dementia. But you also have impaired judgment. You might have disorientation in time and place. Someone thinking that they're in their childhood home, so there's, or not knowing where they are, not knowing what decade it is. And there are many more symptoms. So that's this broad term of dementia. Now, dementia can be caused by specific diseases. And many of y'all are very familiar with Alzheimer's disease. We believe that it causes between 60% and 80% of all these symptoms. And then there are other ones like vascular dementia. There are ones such as Parkinson's with dementia. There's dementia with Lewy bodies. There's frontal temporal degeneration. So, and on, there are these things that it could be. And it can also be coupled with Alzheimer's disease. So it's very complex and it's very ambiguous. But it's worth noting that it's not worth correcting anybody over. But it is good to know specifically if you're a neuropsychologist or you're a neurologist, by looking at the symptoms and doing some tests and putting the pieces together, it's really ruling out different, by hearing about what the symptoms are and seeing what cognitive, what those tests reveal, you sort of eliminate Lewy body dementia or Parkinson's type dementia until you hopefully have that, what they call a differential diagnosis. That is important to the extent that there are certain medications that you don't want if you have a certain type of dementia. So you do want to inquire if you've not already, if that's relevant. So on the right-hand side, we have all these negative things that happen with dementia. But our focus, while we look at the reality, we don't deny the medical aspect of it. On the left-hand side is really what we're focused on. Like, how do we allow our loved ones to continue cooking safely? How do we capitalize on the things that they can do, not on the things that they can't do? So how do we do that? How do we become a dementia-inclusive parish, archdiocese, diocese, deanery, etc.? So this is what I've gleaned and learned from other parishes. This is also what I've learned from just meditating, praying on these things. Education classes, bringing in a nurse practitioner, a physician, someone to talk to your parishes about what this is. Just defining it can bring a lot of peace to people. Support groups. I recently restarted a support group at a Catholic parish back home, and before COVID, we had 4 people, and this restarting of it, we had 13 people show up. So praise God for that. It's starting to reach people, and they're opening themselves up for that and not isolating. Telephone reassurance services where the parishes are calling, checking on people, and that doesn't have to be necessarily specifically just because dementia is involved. Home visits, nursing home visits, like having an apostolate that goes out into memory care, assisted living, nursing homes, etc. Providing transportation to get to Mass, and parish nursing programs. And this is my last slide. I have my contact information. I also have cards with my information if anybody had questions, because I can't do this on my own. My intent is to really get the conversation going, get things started, and build a foundation, and for parishes to take this information and take it out and to serve those in their parishes. So you can go to dementiarosary.com is really the hub of everything. We have prayer cards. We have Norman's work in the prayer cards. We have large prints, which we also have downstairs. And the books, we have a free prayer wall. So visit that, just put a prayer on there, and then I feature that on a Facebook Live the next day or that week, and then it goes into our Tuesday newsletters. So people will be praying, and they'll be clicking a button on the website, and then you'll get an anonymous email that somebody prayed for you. So the idea is to build community, even though we might be many, many miles apart. Articles, podcasts, videos like you saw with Philip, Facebook Live, and in the near future, just networking with parishes, doing more talks such as this one, structured support group guide for volunteers. So I can only facilitate the one at Mary Queen of Peace in Mandeville, Louisiana. But when you consider all the volunteers and ministries worldwide, if I can write a guide to give them the confidence and the structure, then that would be amazing. So if anybody's interested in stuff like that, in that, as I draft it, please let me know. I'll get you involved in the process. And then I mentioned parish missions and speaking engagements. So I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the Q&A afterwards.